Bad Decisions is for raw and unfiltered conversations. Guest opinions are entirely their own. Watch responsibly. And please don't use the show as a life manual unless chaos is your thing. Bad Decisions को बेबाक और बिना फिल्टर वाली बातचीत के लिए बनाया है. मेहमानों की राय पूरी तरीके से उनकी अपनी है. जिम्मेदारी से देखें और प्लीज इस शो को जीवन का ज्ञान मत समझें.
Cheating is a massive problem.
What's the worst decision of your life?
A painful experience which will not be easily forgotten. Chess is seen as an extension of intelligence.
Between Gukesh and Pragg, who do you think will go the deeper distance?
Bobby Fischer, he defeats this great Soviet.
Person like Samay Raina benefiting more from chess, or is chess benefiting more from Samay Raina?
I would love to be hockey again.
Oh, now you see a lot of tournaments in which people get aggressive, throw sometimes the pieces, or what we saw in Magnus Carlsen and Gukesh's match. How do you react to that?
Welcome to Bad Decisions. Cause every step in your life is a decision. Bad decision.
What is the biggest threat on chess right now? A man who's worldwide known to make only right moves is here with me to discuss the wrong one. It's Vishwanathan Anand on Bad Decisions.
Thank you.
Very, very intrigued with the fact that you're coming out of a tournament from Hong Kong. You're preparing for another one. What's keeping you motivated?
I like playing, and that means that you have to maintain some level of competence. When you play, it has to feel natural. I mean, in the sense of the moves have to come quickly and all that. And for that, you can't allow too much rush to come in.
Yeah.
So in the gaps, which by the way, these years getting longer and longer between my tournaments, I need a month before the tournament to get back into some zone of being a chess player. And it takes longer every time because the breaks are getting longer. So the thing, whereas if you play the whole year, then you never lose the touch.
Yeah. All right. But it's still very fascinating to see because you're on the leadership side of things as well. And here you are also competing as a player. But now coming to the core and the crux of the show, because there is no warm-up that we do on the show as such. So the question is, what's the worst decision of your life?
Okay, if that question is framed in a way which suggests something I still regret, but I can answer it in a way, say, a game that still hurts.
Sure.
I think that would have to be, I mean, there are many, of course, but my game with Caruana in Vaikanze in the year 2020, so this was just before the pandemic, that has to take the cake. I reached move 40 in a totally one position.
Yeah.
Where it's almost impossible for things to go wrong. And to this day, when I see the position, even I see the pieces in nearby squares, I feel some horror inside. So I think that there must be more, which have also left their scar, but I think this one pushed all the other scars away and it's kind of dominant right now.
What was the kind of feeling that you got? And what about that position hurts you?
So, like I said, I got to move 40.
Yeah.
And I'm totally winning. And I told myself, right, we're not going to spoil this one. Let me go. So all my good habits from lifetime experience, like I'm sometimes hasty right after the time control. I did everything right. I got up, went there. The idea is to calm down, a break between events. I mean, you shouldn't be excited how the previous few moves went. Now it's the time to focus on this. I came back. I started to calculate. I didn't notice that I was hallucinating or anything. Every move seemed to me logical. I double checked it. Second time it looks logical. And well, there comes a point when you stop double checking. And then I took my time. Basically, if there was a mistake that I tended to do in the past, I actually didn't do it in this thing. And then, but he kept surprising me with one or two unexpected resources. Nothing which really disturbs anything, and it should still be eminently solvable. And I think this was a game where you suffered a lot more because you didn't realize that you were making mistakes. You thought you had actually pushed yourself and found good moves. So we went on a bit, and then by move 49 or 50, I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell have I done? And still it's a draw. But then again, I didn't realize this, because if I realized it, I have so much experience doing it that I would have stopped. But I could no longer be above me and see myself do stuff. When you lose that, you should have the ability in once in a while to be able to say, if I was standing above me and looking there, or standing there and looking at me playing, how would I evaluate this?
Right.
Not you don't do it in a structured way, but you should be able to do that. By then I was thinking, even by this time, because I'd been investing so much time in doing this carefully, I was in time trouble again. And so I made a few moves fast, and then I hit the point of no return.
Yeah.
And once you hit the point of no return, you get even angrier, and you say, what the hell, okay, I'll just play some moves, and you play some moves out of irritation. Though anyway, it's your best strategy to stop and try to make good moves. Even if you're lost, you make good moves. I mean, that's what Caruana had done to me just a few moves ago. But there was nothing to stop it. And I remember getting up from the board thinking, mentally I had the point in my head. I mean, maybe that's a mistake, but I mean, you can't shut down your understanding of chess. I mean, I know what the position is like. So it's not like I was arrogant or counted my eggs before they were hatched or something like that. I just was stunned, and that on the rest day, I no longer wanted to play chess. So in fact, I thought I'm going to go back after the rest day and just make a quick draw and finish it, because I need an extra day to get over this. And it's typical that sometimes you need to play one game where nothing goes wrong in order to push the previous one behind. But I think that game's close to a horror. Sure.
Why do you think that happened when you came back home? Did you reflect back on it?
Not a single new mistake. Every mistake I could think, yeah, but I know this, but I've done this before. I knew when to stop. And like I mentioned, I actually, all the things I had written down in my notes as things I should do when things start to go wrong, I actually did, and it still went totally wrong. It came out of the blue for me. And yeah, some games are particularly traumatic. I was looking forward to beating Caruana at least once. Recently, the trend, I mean, he's much younger. So I was generally starting to have slight, my results were tending down against the younger generation, which is very normal and so on. But I thought, okay, if I can push myself a little bit and win this game, if I'd won this game, it would have been a decent tournament. I would have been on a plus score and a good chance for, if I won one more game, to fight for first place. But after this, I barely struggled. I just struggled along for 2 or 3 days. And then I won a game against Firusha. And I would say I solved anything, but I left the tournament. Something like that.
Did you have an interaction with Karuna?
Yes, we discussed the game, because he also was totally stunned, and he said, well, you could have won like this, you could have won like this, you could have won like this, you could have done like this. And it felt silly that I got confused. Sometimes you have a great variation, an awesome variation, too good variation, and you still make a bad choice. Right. And one of the adjectives is misplaced. Yeah. So that sort of thing. But I think that, yeah.
But was she in almost a 5-decade long career, right? You spoke about this particular incident, which you thought was a horror show. But was there another instance like this, or was it this instance where you felt like, at any point you felt like, I want to give up chess?
Yes, there were more consequential mistakes in my life. But nothing I couldn't come back from. And in fact, as it turned out, nothing I didn't come back from. All of those I repaired. I made the classic rookie mistake when I played Gary, which was not to change my approach for that match. Because my first big match, I tended to think, well, I will be exactly the person I was getting here. I'll be that person for one more match against Gary. I'll just train myself better. So the idea was very linear. I'm going to keep improving. I'm going to be a stronger version of who I was. And later on, I saw that other successful players, they came as someone different. They would add some new element, something unpredictable. So that was one mistake. But I very clearly fixed that mistake when I played Kramnik in 2008. And in fact, the Kramnik match was one of the, well, it was the best match I've ever played in my life. Match here is playing repeatedly against the same opponent.
Yes.
And like that, I think most of the other mistakes, I've corrected them at some point. And I think quite often when I have been in crises where I'm stuck for a year, I wouldn't say I know entirely what I fixed when you came out of the tunnel.
Right.
But when I came out of the tunnel, my eyes had gotten used to the darkness, and you're kind of surprised to see the light again, almost that kind of thing. I think I came to terms with the fact that I was playing more weak. Then I recalibrated, and then the good results came back, and suddenly I realized, okay, it was a temporary blip. Though it went on long enough that I actually thought, oh, that's the new me. I should stop dreaming. And then I got some disproportionate results afterwards. When I lost the match in 2013, the very next year I came back. So most things I managed to recover. And I think I've had decent results after this one. But this one hurts because it actually wasn't consequential.
Yes.
It would have been a nice result in a nice tournament. But beyond that, it's not like it was a world championship or something very career defining. And maybe this one hurt even more because I'd done all the difficult work. I had taken he came at me very aggressively. He had prepared very well. He had found some new ideas, posed me a lot of problems. And I actually solved everything. And then to throw away what was in my hands. I think this is a painful experience which will not be easily forgotten.
But now this stage of life, and since this is bad decisions, is that a decision that you would like to go back and correct? If you were given the lifeline from God that you could change that one decision, is that a decision that you'd like to correct?
Many. There are many decisions I like to correct. I think, first of all, family members, I think with friends, the ones you make, the ones you don't make, too many. But in most cases, I think I've already done that. You do things as a teenager, and then in your 20s, you think, oh, well, I did those better. I learned something from them. And then the ones you make at that age, you correct at a later stage, and so on. But you now come to a point where you think, I wish I didn't know any of this. It was more fun when I was discovering everything for the first time. There's something about the confidence of youth. In general, this brazenness of youth. That's nice, and it's also very useful to have as a chess player. I would love to be that cocky again.
Interesting. You're the one who laid the foundation of the sport in this country. And you're the one who also ended the so-called Soviet dominance in the sport of chess. But if we just had to sort of give some perspective as to the role the sport of chess has played in geopolitics when it came to the Cold War era between these two nations, Russia and US, what was the role of chess?
I think chess was founded or was invented in India. Roughly the Maurya Empire, that time, is when the first references to it appeared. It was mentioned by Chanakya famously.
Yeah.
So that already suggests that it was common in society and is a game that had spread a little bit. It was used as a tool of warcraft, statecraft. Princes were this was one of the skills they were expected to learn. Maybe horse riding, another one, I don't know. But things so that they would learn to think of moves and consequences. And also the pieces reflected the divisions of the army in those days.
True.
And so on. So there's a lot of that. So at that point, it was clearly a royal game. It stayed a royal game for quite some time. A lot of it slowly kind of migrated via Persia, the Middle East, and then landed in Spain. And around about that time, a major rule change happened. So till that point, the queen and the bishop were not very powerful pieces. They moved only one square at a time.
Oh, really?
Yes. And in fact, last year I went to Valencia and somebody showed me a book and a manuscript where you can actually see Ruy Lopez, after whom the famous opening is named. He's writing to some friends and discussing this new rule change. And then they play a game with the new rules. And they document this and say, isn't that interesting? And so the newer rule was appearing. So the queen and bishop were more powerful. And that's when, in fact, what used to be the vizier, I guess, became the queen because of Queen Isabella, who was the queen of Spain at that point.
Right.
Ferdinand and Isabel clearly, conquered Granada and then started the conquests of the Americas and so on. So big deal, and they tried to flatter her by making the most powerful piece a queen, or maybe they were looking for subsidies, I don't know. But anyway, as these things go. Early 1900s, it had become popular in Russia as well. Again, it maybe spread through royal circles, I'm vague on this. But in Russia, the communist government picked it up. And one of the values they attributed to it was, they said, only a communist society which frees workers from having to work for capitalist bosses who won't constantly exploit them and never give them any free time, is that a communist society will allow common citizens to be able to play the game of chess. So the symbolism again is quite clear for them. And they encourage chess, gymnasium of the mind and all that. And their idea was, if we do well at chess, it will show the superiority of our model, that our society provides the leisure and the time to play an art form like chess. And in the rest of Europe, it continued to be an intellectual thing, but the Soviets went nuts. They, in the pre-computer era, had computers never been invented, I'm confident the Soviets would still be the #1 country on earth in chess strength. Computers kind of scrambled this whole hierarchy after that, but very much. So then the communists took over. The Americans were quite shocked because they had some decent hobby players. And I think in America it had a core audience, but it wasn't seen as mainstream pastime. I mean, that was very clearly their other sports. And then they had a famous, right after the war in 1946, they had a famous telex match where the games were played by telex between Russia, Soviet Union and the US. And the Soviets wiped them out, wiped the floor with them. Which was a shock because I think people knew, people in the West suspected that the Soviets were getting stronger and stronger. But in those days, these things weren't very common. You couldn't play tournaments every week and so on. So it took time for news to spread, and then it hit them just how strong, how big the gap was. Our players are losing like babies. So, what's going on? But it's not like there was a reaction to it. I think the Americans just shrugged, and I don't think in the West at that point chess had become a symbol of society or anything like that. They didn't see it in those terms. For them, it was a game and something you played. And if they were weak in one game at one point, they left it there. In the 40s, Bobby Fischer was born, I think, in 43. He fell in love with chess. He was a slight misfit in the sense that he, something like chess had a certain calling for him because it was his area and he could do it. He learned Russian to be able to read Russian books, to understand what they're talking about and things like that. And he broke the dominance for the first time. And in the process, I think there was a surge of popularity of chess in the West because imagine a young American boy from New York, then he comes and he defeats this great Soviet. Everyone inside the thing knew that this was not a contest between two philosophies. America had not really taken part till then. It was all Bobby Fischer. But through him, they felt that their system had been vindicated. And for the Soviets, it's a huge blow. What kind of capitalist society? Also, my God, that one. What did they? How did they just produce some random kid who comes and beats our mighty Soviet Union? And what happened to all the work we did, all the work you're supposed to do? Why did that turn out to be unnecessary? So that was its peak in geopolitics. And then there were two things which kept it in geopolitics for about a decade and a half more. First was Viktor Korchnoi. This was a Soviet player, basically born in the 1930s. He rebelled. For instance, the sports committee had the habit of saying, okay, you are not good enough. You just mark time while we let this guy go through. And Korchnoi miraculously was given a chance to play a tournament in Amsterdam. So he goes to Amsterdam, and then he's sitting in a room with Tony Miles, the English player. And he tells Tony Miles, how do you spell asylum? Tony, I would have loved to be in that room at that point. But anyway, Tony Miles says, oh, it's ASYLUM. So he writes a letter, and then he goes to the local police station, gives them a letter, and it sits there. They say, oh, you want asylum? Okay. And then they give him asylum, and then he stays in Holland. Eventually, he migrates to Switzerland.
What an
And that kind of put the cat among the pigeons. After that, Soviets refused to play him anywhere. So many stories I could tell you. So they protested every little thing the other side did. So first they were discussing which flags they should use. And Korchnoi wanted to play under the Swiss flag. And the Soviets said, no, he's not yet a Swiss citizen, some technicality. But he can play under a white flag, and we will write stateless on it. And Korchnoi famously replied, no, let me play under the Soviet flag and write I have escaped from it. Then they discussed which refreshments they could have during the game. And then the Karpov asked for some yogurt. Korchnoi said, well, that could be a signal. If he may have some internal code where if they send him, I don't know, peach yogurt, then that means your position is bad. Take emergency measures. Or if they send him, I don't know,
plain yogurt,
apricot yogurt, then it's something else, and so on. So he said, no, I will only agree to him receiving a prearranged yogurt at a prearranged time. And then Korchnoi got people from the Ananda Marga sect, and they came and sat in the audience, and they were supposedly hypnotizing Karpov, or maybe they were countering the hypnosis of the Russian hypnotist that was there. Became a circus show, but obviously for journalists this was great because they didn't have to try and understand what is happening in the moves. They could just write about this stuff. And so that match was good. And Korchnoi had a couple of more matches. And then Kasparov came along. And he was also not very quiet. I think he was well behaved enough in the beginning. He knew he was not someone that the Soviet system hated. Though they slightly leaned towards Karpov, he had his supporters and things. And he knew how to keep quiet and not provoke things. But when he was losing a match for a long time, then when he started coming back, the FIDE president went and cancelled the whole match. And the obvious suspicion was the Soviets asked him to do it, which means they were intervening on behalf of their guy because they were afraid their guy Karpov was collapsing. And so then after that, Kasparov and Karpov, they played 6 matches. They played in 84, 85, 86, 87 and 90. And they played 2 matches in the beginning. So these guys played all these matches, and they felt like the Fischer-Spassky match. Because Kasparov was the guy who was speaking out against the system and so on. And Karpov was the loyalist. So it had a bit of the Cold War spirit around it. Though the goalposts had moved. Gorbachev was now the leader of the Soviet Union. So Kasparov wasn't that much of a rebel. Who was following Soviet philosophy can be debated here. In a sense, Kasparov was rebelling when Gorbachev was saying it's time to question many things about our society.
And then you came along in the faded end of that era. How did the chess media react when you announced yourself on the big stage?
I think people were happy to describe it as someone from the birthplace of chess. And they hoped that this is a new big country which until now was not very interested in chess, but now was going to take part. But it also took some time for the effective thing. I mean, I was the first Grandmaster in 1987 December. I got my title. I formally got it in April 88. And by the year 2000, when I became world champion for the first time, there were 6 Grandmasters. Even by 2010, we had added only 14 more. So we were at 20. And then from 2010 till 26, we have added 77.
Yeah.
So that's when it starts to accelerate. I mean, I can draw a lot of threads, but it's not like these were very easy to see at that point or even now. And India was slowly opening up in many areas. And I was very often compared to the IT revolution, which also kind of hit the world at that stage. I mean, we were not known for IT, and then suddenly Indians are very, very competitive in IT, and it was often compared to that and so on. I don't think, though, the Cold War came, but it was generally seen as nice that good for the sport that Asia was taking part as well.
Look at us now, how far we've come in the sport of chess. But when you look at chess as a sport in this country, do you think it's represented well in India? The way India is positioning itself around chess, are you happy with it?
No. And yes, first of all, we shouldn't underestimate how much has changed for the better. But having said that, I think in a country like India, it's very easy to think we have a lot of momentum, but a very small percentage of our people is enough to give that momentum. So I think it's very much a southern sport still. Yes, Maharashtra and Bombay are participating heavily, so is Bengal. And it has become, and the majority of grandmasters are also not from Tamil Nadu, so you shouldn't exaggerate. But roughly, I would love to see many more women, the same effect to happen with women. So increased female participation, and it could go more mainstream everywhere. So there's a lot to feel incredibly proud about and everything, but there's a lot of places still where the sport can grow. I think the North in general, the easy thing is if they need anything, they can always come here. And coaching is now often over a call, and many things have changed. But I think we can still grow a lot, but not at all in a critical way. I think you have to be happy with where we were and where we are now. It's pretty incredible.
But what is it about the southern dominance, the southern part of India that dominates the sport?
I can't see an obvious explanation except the fact that Tamil Nadu already had the old core of chess enthusiasts, and it was built on top of that. We already had that community of chess players and people who enjoyed and liked to play chess and followed it. And maybe culturally we also, I'm getting into slippery ground here, maybe culturally also many families will teach chess to their youngsters. I learned it from my mother famously.
Yeah.
And that was the case with many families. You had a family member or a friend or an uncle or a parent who would teach you, and it was prevalent. These things often work that way. You start off with something just being common thing, and then it grows from there.
Yeah. When you talk about the media representation of chess players, of course, as they're shown as geniuses, masterminds, it's all about psychology. Is there a certain aspect you wish the media touched about chess players that could have come into the focus more?
No, not at all. The question is whether it's that deserved, this association. Chess is seen as a substitute or an extension of intelligence in general.
True.
And this is not incorrect. But in the same way, many physical sports are just seen as physically challenging, physically tough and so on. They are oversimplifications, they're caricatures to some degree. See, once upon a time, you needed that lonely genius like Fischer to catch people's attention and thing. But the problem is he overdid it, this thing. And now it's seen as normal and fine. But then also you miss this thing. People are fascinated by that one guy who's crazy, but
Yeah.
once it's been seen as normal, it's also seen as boring. And so we are torn as well. We have to hype certain things up.
It is a new personality that is being developed with all the comedians coming to chess. Like, for example, Samay Raina, what you brought to the aspect of chess. I've heard you say in a few interviews that you're very happy because he got in a new audience in. But let me ask you a question here. Is a person like Samay Raina benefiting more from chess, or is chess benefiting more from Samay Raina?
During the pandemic, some very, very unusual things happened. One was a lot of people came back to chess. Suddenly they had a year free. It's like being stranded in an island. And they thought, oh, yes, I used to play chess. That seemed like fun, and let's do it. And in the meantime, chess.com had solved the problem a little bit by making it as frictionless as possible to download an app and start playing. And so they were very good at that. And they kind of gamified it. And it turned out that people will do anything on their phone addictively that they wouldn't necessarily respond to another way. And on top of that, you had these streamers. In other countries, it was streamers. Here, you're right. We had this extremely unusual thing of Samay mixing chess in his comedy. I think for him, it was one more backdrop. I mean, all comedians need some sort of backdrop to work against. And for a while, he thought chess is a great backdrop. It expanded our audience hugely. In the same way that, let's say, Queen's Gambit also made it slightly more mainstream, introduced it to a lot of people who might not have thought of it. And those days, around about 6 years ago, chess sets, chess clocks and all just flying off stores. You couldn't find them anywhere. And I think he's also influenced many chess players, because many chess players understand now that if you talk to the media, you have to dumb things down a lot. I mean, not get technical. You have to phrase it in everyday language, and you have to think like an audience member and think, well, if I describe this game in the way they want to understand, how would I describe it? Subconsciously, you get it from many things, streamers, things, but okay, got to give my nod to Samay for what he did.
Coming to the newer generation of players that we have, and of course that has positioned India because it's also happened at the back of, whatever rise we saw in everyday lives. People were starting to play chess, especially with the advent of chess.com coming in and all of that. Between Gukesh and Pragg, who do you think will go the deeper distance? Who's a better player currently?
I don't know. Like there were many Soviet rivalries which were very similar. And a very similar mechanism is playing out with these guys. You can include Arjun as well in this group.
True.
It's that one of them has a good result, and then 3 months later you see the other two are playing at a much higher level. Because this one's success has lit a fire under the other two. And then one of them will have a success, and then these two will. And so they have this push-pull effect. This happened in the Soviet Union with a certain generation, Petrosyan, Geller, Spassky, Kochnoy, all these people. For many years, because they were each other's rivals, they fiercely, they didn't allow each other to relax. And that's the effect we'll have here. Of course, when they get into which was the 40s or 50, whatever age they tend to want to stop, then, they'll stop at different times. But that'll be a totally different decision. I don't think one of them is going to pull ahead very fast. They've replicated this pattern over and over again over the last 3 or 4 years, which is one goes a little bit ahead and then the other two join quickly. And in fact, they're pulling the others as well. So there's a group of 6, and then there are even younger players and so on. And second, now we have amazing talent from other countries, Turkey, Uzbekistan, the US, many countries like this have amazing junior squads. So trust me, in this year's Olympiad, the most overused word will be kids. And I'm afraid I will also do it. kids. And at some point you realize, wait, they're all higher rated than me. Damn. So.
But when you've played the sport at the highest level, you've got the kids coming in, and sometimes the results goes in their favor when you're playing against them. Is there a sense of being replaced, or is there a sense of just the kind of legacy that you've left behind?
Both. And it's a totally normal feeling in chess. I mean, young chess players have always replaced older ones, and the next generation always is a newer, stronger version, because first of all, their experiences are based on yours. So they... And also, like I said, because this is a computer generation, so their play is also very high level. But it's the natural order of things. I used to think that I could get into my 50s playing chess. And most of our life, we think 50s is far enough away that it's something we can leave for there. But then when you finally get there, you realize, oops. But I thought I should be able to compete in my 50s. I'm sort of doing it, but I'm not planning to do it around the year. And this is also normal. Most chess players, chess has always been a young person's sport.
Yeah.
Contrary to what people think, it is not an old person's sport. It's a young person's sport. In the same way that language is something for young people. Young people can master language without trying. Older people have to put in a lot of effort. And it's the same thing in chess. Youngsters will pick it up intuitively. And so historically, that's always been how it's been.
Right. You mentioned about the younger players being more intuitive, and that is something that as you get old, that comes down. But this is what I was wondering, with the advent of technology and with computers coming in, would you still say that the younger generation is as intuitive as you guys were?
Probably even more so, because computers are flooding us with new information. And no human can take it all in very fast. So the gaps in your understanding are always filled by intuition. A lot of chess, most of chess is guessing what feels right. You build on the information you have, but you can't see it through till the end. So at some point you have to take a guess and say, well, I see the trend of travel, or I see the pattern, and I'm going to go that I'm better and this can happen, and I'm going to go with that hunch.
True. But you also played with computers. You've seen it all actually. So with the advent of technology, how much has the sport changed now?
It's a much faster sport. So some of the trends are very much faster and faster formats. But it's also a sport where you can learn much faster, and that's why we have so many grandmasters at the age of 12 and so many youngsters. It's because the time it took you to learn something is now measured in 2 or 3 years, what used to take a decade or more. That's why instead of becoming very strong at 19, you're very strong at 13. And that's also a clear trend.
Yeah. And talk about the threat on chess. Because very recently the media has picked up about a few players talking about cheating in chess. With the advent of technology, that becomes even more deeper and more difficult to catch. And there could be a certain paranoia that an opponent would be sitting in, or a certain player would be in. What is the biggest threat on chess right now?
I think we're already facing that, because the cheating is a massive problem and we're never going to solve it. Because essentially what we have locked ourselves into an eternal arms race. We're never going to be able to say, well, we've finally fixed this problem. We'll just have to keep on dealing with it. That's why there's so many anti-cheating measures. That's why that's one more reason for faster trends. And not only audience participation, but one of the reasons for faster events is cheating is harder when you have no time to do it. So
interesting.
That's, if you're playing a 2-minute game, you don't have time to go and check a phone and go to the thing and get some secret information. By the time you process it, your clock has run out. So those are the things. I think the game of chess is evolving. I mean, people are trying new formats, and a lot of the formats have to do with time. For instance, one of the most interesting formats in classical chess is what they attempted last year, which is to make the game classical in the beginning, but then don't give any further increments of time, so that once you've run out of time, that's it. You're playing on seconds for the rest of the game. So the combining of both. Now, FIDE has introduced a new format together with the organizer of Norway Chess, which is called Total Chess. And what that is to have multiple formats in the same day. So you play the classical, the rapid, and the blitz. You might play them in the same day. And that's one more thing. So you can see a lot of movement around the edges. Anti-cheating, or the potential of cheating, is always going to be there. Here it's, if you lose the trust, you could spend decades trying to get it back. So it's important to never take your thing. But we're never, as I said, we are never going to solve that one.
Vishy, when you've reached a certain level and this level of success, do you think to obtain this level of success, there is a lot of loneliness also attached, especially in an individual sport like this?
I think sport and individual sport, certain amount of loneliness, certain amount of selfishness. You need. I mean, they call it sometimes determination or killer instinct, but at some level, it's selfishness as well, right? You don't have the time to think about other people, and at the field of competition, whether it's a chessboard or something else, you have to want to beat the other person. I think those qualities come at a certain point, but already I feel nowadays it's less. It doesn't matter to me that much, and I think I'm now able to put things in their proper perspective. But again, it suggests that there is a proper perspective. I think the competitive aspect is just as proper as anything else. It just tends to dominate at one stage, and then you move on.
Okay.
Even intensely competitive chess players, that I remember them to have been competitive and quite aggressive all their lives. Suddenly meet them now, and they're just so chilled out now.
Yes.
So
What place are you in life right now? How would you define that place?
right now, I'm very much enjoying the time I'm spending at home. Also, my son is 15, so I enjoy. That he's at that. Well, every age when you're young is awkward, but that's a fun age. And also, the more time I spend at home, my wife and I get to hang out a lot, and it's a different thing. But while there are many, many happy moments in the past, you also feel that this is how life should be. That there should come a point where you're very happy where you are. But sure, I'm happy to follow other young chess players and enjoy the ride, and know that I played my part in that. But I think it's equally important to get in these years with the family and all that as well. Next thing he'll be 16, after that he'll be 17, then he might go to university. So you got to grab these moments when you can. And some of my best memories also would be the time I spent over the last 10 years as he was growing up.
True.
So that's very special as well. I think I don't have so many clear goals. Generally, I think if I meet a few friends and family every day and I'm happy, that's good enough.
Well, I'm glad I met you. Thank you so much, Vishay. Thanks a lot for joining me. Okay. Thank you.
Bad decision.
How many chessboards do you have? Do you have a
Not that much. I mean, for my own need, I need one or two lying around somewhere, and I'll play, and you tend not to think. But there are people who collect these boards and don't know how to play anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They collect them because they're beautiful works, and that's it.
That's me, actually. I do that.
Correct. This one is copper and bronze.
So where is this from?
Linares.
Now you see a lot of tournaments in which people get aggressive, throw sometimes the pieces, or what we saw in Magnus Carlsen Gukesh's match. How do you react to that?
At one level, I think, well, look what happens when you have a camera on people and they start doing things. Another reaction was, I know how he felt, because he spoiled such a good position against Gukesh. He must have been very frustrated afterwards. But I also thought, well, he's been on the other side of that many times, so maybe it's good for him to learn once in a while what it feels like.
It's perfect.